Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm making this video because very recently we actually had an explosion of madness in the YTBC, and we had an absolute outbreak of buffoonic and delusional activities. And I'm making this video just to highlight and to really remind everybody that we really did see an explosion of madness these past few days. And I'm taking people back to this so that we can point at this as an example and say, this is literally what it looks like when the dehydrated brain, that is to say a brain which is starved of oxygen, that is to say somebody who lives a dehydrated lifestyle, this is literally what it's capable of producing when it's confronted with information that it doesn't fully understand. Now, the explosion of madness that I'm talking about is really just when we began to see an absolute peak in buffoonic activity on the YTBC during the period of time where it came out in the news that Mayweather had rejected the $5 million fine or penalty for failing a drug test, of course, with this upcoming fight between himself and Manny Pacquiao. Now, this just highlights everything perfectly, whereby common sense is no longer available. Okay, I really want to stress this to people, that common sense is not available. And the reason it's not available is because if you'd only taken just a couple, if these people, these extremists, these people who practice the skill of buffoonery, if they had just taken a couple seconds just to process the information, I mean, it would take them longer than a couple seconds because they've already starved themselves of oxygen. But if they would have just had something to drink and taken the time to process the information, they would have very easily seen that the $5 million penalty was a joke. Just to get people up on the news, for those of you who missed the situation, there was Pacquiao's camp, Michael Kantz, proposed that there should be a $5 million penalty for anybody who fails a drug test in this Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. Now, Floyd rejected this. Floyd and Leonard Ellerbe rejected this. Now, the reason they rejected this is what we're going to talk about in this video, but the reaction to the rejection from Floyd is what I call the explosion of madness. This is what I call the height or the peak of buffoonic activity. This is what I call a malfunction of the logical centers of the brain, because you had a lot of people in the YTBC, extremists, people who are emotionally attached, going around saying, oh, Floyd is definitely on steroids. You know, he's on performance enhancing drugs because he's turned this down. Why else wouldn't he pay $5 million? And then it's like they don't even look at the number that they're talking about. They talk and they don't even look at the person that they're talking about. We're talking about Floyd Money Mayweather. This is a guy who's made hundreds of millions boxing, the highest paid athlete in the world. And they're saying, why wouldn't he pay $5 million? Oh, he must definitely be on steroids. See, this is where common sense is no longer available. Because if it was available, you would ask yourself, that is such a small fine that obviously Mayweather can pay that must mean there's something more to this. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is the actual situation that was happening? Well, the United States Anti-Doping Agency already has a policy of penalty for anybody who fails a drug test. And we know what this penalty is. This includes being banned from the sport. It includes the possibility, of course, of lawsuits going on, and the fight is going to be halted instantly. Now, the penalty that USADA already has in their contract, which is something that both men actually agreed to when they signed the contract to take random blood and urine testing, the penalties that's already in that policy is a more severe penalty than what Michael Kantz was suggesting. So now you have to ask yourself, if the penalty that Leonard Ellerbe and Mayweather actually decided to uphold is a more severe penalty, what exactly do you think Michael Kantz was trying to do when he was suggesting a $5 million penalty? Ask yourself a simple question. Do you think Floyd Mayweather can afford to pay $5 million? If the answer to that question is yes, that penalty is obviously not severe enough because he has so much money. If $5 million fell out of Mayweather's Gucci bag, he's not going to stoop down and pick up the money. He's going to expect, one of his bodyguards to stoop down and pick it up. He's not going to waste his time picking up $5 million. That's nothing to Floyd. And that's also nothing to Pacquiao. But even with all his tax issues, he can afford to pay $5 million when you look at how much he's going to be making in this fight. You know, are people really this dumb? Are people really this stupid that they don't understand? Pacquiao stands to make 80 million. Floyd stands to make 120 million. Why would either person have a problem paying $5 million? That doesn't make any sense. That penalty was too lenient. And this was being suggested by the Pacquiao camp. So now you have to ask yourself, are they worried about Pacquiao testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs? Why else are they trying to propose a more lenient penalty than the one they've already agreed to in the United States Anti-Doping Agency policy within the contract that they signed when they signed the contract to do this fight on May 2nd? Do you see how this all plays in? But all it takes is a couple seconds to just process the information. When you're dehydrated and you don't process the information because you have the incurable disease, you're always going to say things which don't make any sense, and you're going to leave yourself open to be countered. This is the problem that these people have. And then everything became totally cartoonish. I mean, it was just straight comedy when you had the man who owns the souls of the delusional. This is the man who owns the extremist souls. You know, this is the 83-year-old man by the name of Bob Arum. He owns the minds and the souls of the idiots and the extremists and the people with the incurable disease. He owns them. And he goes on Fight Hype and he basically agrees with Floyd and Leonard Ellerbe, and he exposes the fact that both Manny Pacquiao and Floyd rejected the $5 million offer because they could make much more if either person fails the drug test. And this is coming from the king of the dehydrated, the king of the delusional. This is the man who said, yesterday I was lying, today I'm telling the truth. This is the man that these people hold as, you know, some kind of gospel when he speaks. And he's telling them that both Manny and Floyd rejected the $5 million offer. And so now this was when it became very funny. You had the extremists, the Pacquiao extremists, going around saying Floyd is on performance-enhancing drugs because he turned down a tiny $5 million, which is a drop in the ocean. And that was all they needed to say that Floyd was on steroids. So this just shows you how quick they had to jump the gun. This just shows you how they jumped to conclusions. This is the behavior of a terrified human being. This is the behavior of something which has been cornered in, you know, something which has its back against the walls. This is really the behavior of an animal who's really just being provoked. Okay, and this is an agitation, and they're beginning to strike out and say things which are very, very telling to their current state of mind. They're beginning to say things which shows you they are going through a very difficult situation, dealing with the fact that Floyd Mayweather is going to be fighting Manny Pacquiao on May 2nd. But I do appreciate the fact that these people provide so much natural comedy by the things that they do. And it's just good to be able to point to something and say, this was a recent example of something like buffoonery. So with that said, thank you for watching this video. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.
Niggas stick around, that'll lift them up or sit them down. Niggas rapping insane, but they really twat. Homie, we really hot, name rank, A block. Slang cane, chain hang, heavy bop. Maintain, things ain't millies pop.